Welcome to Hooked2Hunt. In today's video, we're going to be talking about whitetail property development. And John's going to join me on this video. He's doing some things himself. He just bought a property this year, a small acreage, and he's going to be developing that property. And right now is an excellent time to start the cold stratification process on any trees you plan on putting on your land if you have not done so already. We're going to jump into it. We're going to talk about what trees we're going through for cold stratification and how we go about doing that. There's a few different ways you can do it, but today you will see all the way from chestnut trees, persimmons, apple trees, all the way into dogwood. Why am I planting dogwood? I don't know. Stay tuned and you'll find out. So I'm going to kick things off today talking about one of the main trees, or one of the most popular trees that you hear that people are planting, and that's the chestnut tree. Deer absolutely love chestnut trees. A fully mature chestnut tree can create a whole lot of forage, a whole lot of food for whitetails out there, and they will travel to go eat it. So there's different types of chestnut trees. I currently am cold stratifying the Chinese chestnut tree today, but I will also in the future be doing some American chestnuts as well. So I just want to go through some basics here before we go ahead and get started. So first off, purchasing your chestnut trees. So it's very important when you purchase your chestnuts, or before you purchase your chestnuts, whether you're buying them online, from a nearby nursery, or wherever you're getting them at, to make sure they are not treated with anything. It'll really decrease your sprout rate. Probably could be up to by 75%. So definitely make sure you buy untreated chestnuts. And this goes for all seeds, right? One more thing, if you do buy your trees online, or whoever you're buying from, make sure whoever you're buying them from are in the same USDA zone that you're in, or wherever they harvest those nuts, that they're in the same USDA zone. Trees have memory. So if you're buying them from the same zone, it is more likely that those trees are going to thrive in that climate, and they're used to it. All right. So we're going to start off with the chestnuts, as I mentioned. As you can see here, I have 22 chestnuts, roughly. And the process I'm going to do for the cold stratification for the chestnuts is I'm going to plant those in sand. So when I go to plant these in sand, you're going to want to get some sort of Tupperware container. If you have a lot of chestnuts, you can use 5-gallon buckets. But when you do this, make sure that the containers are clean, sanitary. Make sure you wash your hands. I've planted different trees and stuff in the past, and I had the kids help me. We didn't wash our hands. Everybody touched everything. And then I had a whole lot of mold on different seeds. So make sure everything is clean when you do this. What you're going to do is take and put a layer of sand at the bottom. And then you're going to throw a layer of chestnuts spread out on top here. Make sure you put some spacing in between them. If you do end up with mold on some of your chestnuts, you're going to have a lot better turnout if you don't have them too close together, because that mold will spread between them. So if you have a little bit more spacing in between them, it's less likely that you're going to contaminate all of them, or a lot of them, if you have some bad ones in there. So one other thing, your sand that you're gathering, make sure you're not going to well, I'm not saying you can't get it at a store, but you got to make sure the sand's untreated. A lot of your sand that you buy at the store is going to be treated sand, and you want untreated sand. So if you can gather them from a beach, the river, I actually gathered them from right along the Mississippi here, my backyard. I went down and scraped up some frozen sand, which was a lot of work. I should have did this earlier. So, but make sure you don't use treated sand. Otherwise, you will impact your sprouting of the chestnuts. I have a nice layer, just 4 there. Like I said, you can use bigger containers. I even have a little snow still in the sand, which is fine. you're going to want to add water or some sort of moisture, not too much, to the sand. This already has moisture in it. It's frozen. There's a little bit of snow in there, so I won't be adding any additional water to this sand today, but you're going to want to make sure there's some moisture in it. And then you're going to put another layer over top of those. And then you're just going to continue spacing them out as you go along. I'm actually going to put a little bit more sand in there. Ideally, I probably should have grabbed a little bit bigger containers, but this is Tupperware we're going to throw away. Everybody has all that odd Tupperware somewhere in their house, and that's what I'm trying to use up today. So I got 8 in this one container. I'll probably leave it at that. I'll go ahead and close it up. And the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to poke some holes in the top. And of course you can do that. You can do this before you put them in there. Some cheap Tupperware. It's kind of cracking everywhere. Probably leave it at that. But poke holes in the top, poke holes in the bottom, just to keep some air movement so it isn't so completely sealed. And that will also help stop mold. So there's one thing of chestnuts here. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the rest. All right, so we have all 22 chestnuts now in these containers here. These will put off, when we're all done with all this here, that's all going to go into a fridge. So the fridge is going to provide a cold, consistent environment, and that's basically what you're trying to do. You can go, if you have buckets and you're doing a whole lot of these at one time, you can go bury these buckets. Then you're not taking up a bunch of fridge space and everything else. But this smaller stuff, I got a little fridge, we're gonna go put it in at the end. Chestnuts will take anywhere from 2 months to 3 months is kind of the range that they should be at least in the cold stratified for. And then I'll pull them out. Along that time, you can go back and check to see if they're sprouting. You can check for mold and so forth and get rid of the moldy ones. What I will tell you, the more times you go in there and the more times you touch everything, the more chances you have to create mold. You can check it safely. Just make sure you wash your hands and everything, control it. That's probably the best way to go. Every couple weeks, maybe go check it. See if they're sprouting. Kind of keep an eye on them. If there's mold, get rid of the moldy ones. But do wash your hands before you do that. Otherwise, you can contaminate them. So, all right. So these are Chinese chestnuts. 2 months to 3 months of cold stratification. You can do it in the fridge. You can do it in sand. You also can use peat moss, which if we go over to John here, I think John was using some peat moss. They said that has some sanitary properties that kind of eliminate the chances of mold. So I had sand accessible, and it was real cheap like. The next thing that I'm going to be doing here is persimmons. Now I actually found some American persimmons that were from southern Illinois, which is pretty close to here, which is good. So hopefully they're used to this climate, a little bit colder climate. Persimmons grow really well in the middle of the states, and I think I'm in zone 4, maybe a little bit closer to 5, between 4 and 5 right here. But a little bit farther south than that, they really grow well. But these should grow all right, hopefully. Might have to nurse them along a little bit through the first winter or two, but then they should be completely good. But either way, go into cold stratification for that. Basically the same process. So we're going to take another container, poke some holes in it. The guy I bought them from on eBay had a really interesting way of sealing them up. There are 50 American persimmon seeds that we'll be planting in here. Definitely a lot smaller seeds. You can get a whole lot more in one and still keep them spread out so they aren't touching each other. All right, there you go. Cover that up with another layer of sand. The more stuff you have going, you probably want to stay consistent in your labels. You think you know everything now, but 3 months later you might forget what different seeds look like. The property that I'm developing is kind of a wetland area. There's some a little bit higher up ground, but a lot of it's wetland. There's some areas that's just a lot of open grass fields right now, and it's pretty low grass. Doesn't provide a whole lot of cover. There's just a whole lot of land that's not really being used that well. And the property right now does not hold deer very well either, because it is open, or mostly open. We do have a food plot that we put in it this last year, but there is at least a good 15 acres of land that's just not being utilized. And it's also in a place where there's no human traffic at all, because you have to cross a creek to get over there. And it butts right up next to other land. So what my plan is to put in there to try to create a bedding area is you need cover. You need cover that you can't see through. So I bought some dogwood that I'm going to be planting. I'm actually going to be planting 3 different types of dogwood. The dogwood I'm planting today is kind of a cherry dogwood, but the next 2 types of dogwood that I didn't get in yet that I'll also be doing is your red osier dogwood. So your red osier dogwood will grow even if it gets flooded. It can actually be growing in standing water. But these dogwood plants, a lot of them don't grow that high, but they create really thick cover, and most of them are pretty resilient. The deer also like to feed on the red osier dogwood, and they also like to feed on a lot of the other dogwood as well. They eat the flowers, eat the cherries, you name it. So provides cover, provides some food, but the most important thing I wanted to create was nice thick cover in the long run. And these plants will do it. A lot of the dogwood trees won't grow taller than 15 feet tall. I'll get more details and strategy and exactly what the property looks like in a following video. But today I just want to focus on more of the cold stratification process. So we're going to do basically the same thing with the cherry dogwood. So this one I'm going to do a little bit different. Right here, bought them on eBay. Bunch of cherry dogwood. This one, I'm just going to throw the seeds in. Dump some sand in there. Alright, just shake it around. There's a pretty nice even mix overall. They're all spread out. Dump the rest of the sand on top. And cherry dogwood, all set. Cold stratification time on the cherry dogwood is 90 to 120 days is what's recommended. This is something that grows really well in the colder climate. So this is something specifically that grows great all the way from where we're at, even farther north into Minnesota, Dakotas. All right, so far I got Chinese chestnuts, American persimmons, cherry dogwood, and the last thing I got is just a few Honeycrisp apple seeds. For the apple seeds, I figured I'd do something a little bit different to show you a different way of cold stratification. Apple seeds are pretty small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some paper towels damp, and then I'm going to lay them out in the paper towels. I'm going to fold them in half, and I'm going to put them in Ziploc bags that are going to have small holes poked in them. And basically you go and you just lay those in the fridge as well. And that can stay in there from also 2 to 3 months, probably more around the 3-month range. Mine will be in there for probably at least 3 months before I go and plant them. So I'm going to go ahead and lay out these seeds on one half the paper towel and fold it over on top. All right, they're laid out on the paper towel. You're going to flip them over, flip the paper towel over. Make sure if you do it this way that you do not have the paper towel too damp. If the paper towel is too damp, you're going to have higher likelihood of getting mold. Poke a couple holes in the bag. I will be planting a lot more apple seeds in this next month, and I'll probably do the cold stratification process with the sand. I just like that a little bit more, and I think you get a little bit less mold is what I've experienced in the past. That's your cold stratification with that. I'm going to label these. Like I said, they're Honeycrisp apples. Those will stay in for at least 90 days too in the cold stratification process. When you're doing this, also you can use soil, but if you do use soil, make sure that you do not use anything with fertilizer in it. If you use peat moss, make sure you use peat moss without fertilizer in it as well, and you should be pretty successful.
How are we doing today, guys? Hey, it's John here with Hooked2Hunt. Today we're going to show you a little bit of cold stratification. I have a variety of different plants or seeds that I'm going to be doing. I got some hybrid chestnuts here. I have some American persimmon, and I'll show you a picture of this later. Some giant European chestnuts. They're big. They're a little bigger than a quarter. And then we got some plum trees here. So the plum seeds are already pre-cracked. If you get a plum seed, any of you guys that have eaten a plum know that there's a hard protecting, kind of like a walnut. You break it open and then the seeds inside. So they already came pre-broke open, and we'll share these. I got all these seeds. Actually, I got all these seeds from Amazon. Most of them came from a company, CZ Grain. I believe it's an Iowa company. So we're going to give these seeds a try and get them into cold stratification. And the first process of that is we got to mix our soil to the right mixture, the right consistency. So you don't want it too wet and you don't want it too dry. If you get it too wet, the seeds can mold. So we don't want that. We need the moisture level to be perfect. So, and then, now this is what I'm using. I picked this up at Menards. It is an organic peat moss mix. There may be some other stuff in there, but this is a peat moss mix. And the consistency that you want to go with is you want just enough water to where when you get your hand in here and grab a handful of it and you squeeze, that you can just get a couple drips of water coming through. So, and peat moss, get my water here. Peat moss repels water for the most part, so it does take some mixing to get it to take that water in. So it's always better to start with the water in the bowl. So you start with the water in the bowl, and then you start adding the peat mix accordingly, and then mixing it up. You guys can see the drips coming off of there. Way too much, so I gotta add some more. Too much water, so I gotta add another pinch or two of our mix here. And I think it's still a little too wet. When I squeeze that out, I can still pinch out a little strand, but we're running more drips than what I want. So we're gonna put a little more mix in there and repeat this process. So now while I'm doing this, another thing that you guys want to make sure that you do is take your bags that we're gonna mix these in. We're gonna put these in Ziploc bags, but you want to make sure that you label those Ziploc bags with the date that you put these in, what kind of seed that you're putting in. Now, most seeds for cold stratification are going to take anywhere from 90 to 100 days to start sprouting. Now, we'll backpedal a little bit, because those of you that don't know what cold stratification is, it is a process where the seed has to go through a season, a cold spell. Most seeds around here, we're in Iowa, will be cold from anywhere from October until mostly March, and they'll start sprouting in April. Where most seeds only require 90 to 100 days of cold stratification. So that's the reason that we're doing it in the garage and we're doing it now, is that way we can control that. Instead of waiting until March to where these seeds start to grow, we can get a little bit of a head start and get these growing, so that by the time that last frost sets in, we can actually, if we wanted to, we could put these seeds outside and they'd already be seedlings. So they'd have a head start on everything. So we got that mixed. And I can just get some water out of there. So that's about where we want to be. And then we got our bags right there. We got them labeled. So we're going to fill our bags about half to 3/4 of the way full. So I got our 2 bags here. We're going to put giant chestnuts in that one. We're going to put our plums in that one. So we're going to dump our plum seeds into here. We got 10 plum seeds going into there. And you just want to give them a shake, get them covered in that mixture. So I got them in that mix. We got our giant chestnuts, bigger than 1/4. I got 5 of them here that are going to go in here. We did a project earlier today. Same thing for my daughter. She's doing a project for 4-H, and she's going to do that as well. And we did some cold stratification on some seeds for her as well. So I got a big bag for the persimmon. Into our bowl for the persimmons. And there's our persimmons. They're a smaller seed. And those of you that don't know what persimmons are, they're small fruit. They are often referred to as sugar plums. Deer absolutely love them. And where we are at in Iowa is actually right on the border of where they'll grow. So some of these may not even make it. So this is our hybrid chestnuts. And this is a Dunstan chestnut, which is a hybrid. It's a mix between an American chestnut and a Chinese chestnut, so they're blight resistant. And if you guys do any research on chestnuts or know anything about chestnuts, is that chestnuts used to be one of the most prevalent trees in the U.S. However, blight wiped them almost completely out. I think it was 99.5% of trees were wiped out by blight that were in that blight-stricken area. Trying to bring them back. We're gonna go ahead and dump our chestnuts into there. And these chestnuts here are a lot smaller. I'd say they're more closely the size of a nickel, maybe a penny. I mean, where the giant chestnuts are a lot bigger. 20 of these. I got 20 hybrid chestnuts. I got 10 giant chestnuts. You seen me put 5 of them in. And then my daughter did her project where she put 5 chestnuts in. So I got quite a variety here. One reason we use peat moss is peat moss is a bacteria preventer. So there you have it. I got my bag of hybrid chestnuts, I got my persimmons, and then I got my giant chestnuts and my plums all in here, all labeled. We're gonna go ahead, stick them in the fridge, which is just behind me here, and make sure to tune in 120 days or so, and we're going to show you what happens, and we'll go into depth more about what we're doing with the seeds we get. So make sure to like, share, subscribe. You know the deal. You got to become part of that Hooked2Hunt tribe, guys. Hooked2Hunt.